Real quick before we get started, I just want to say a couple things about Adobe MAX because I was there. I got invited to come, and I gotta say, I know we talk about it and we're in Adobe group, so of course we're gonna say it's the coolest thing ever. But I'm gonna say, just as like, I didn't plan on going. I kind of got the ability to go at the last minute. Um, and it was if you have the ability to go to something like an Adobe Max, I really encourage you to go. It is really kind of a cool event, and there's a lot of learning that goes on. It's a lot of cool events and people meeting and just other stuff. So I'm not going to say that it's a cheap thing to attend, but it is definitely worth it from a creative standpoint, and from a just like, I don't know, like getting recharged. I mean, all of us do this for a living for the most part, and it's easy to get burned out. And spending a couple days. I mean, you're in LA, so I'll take the good with the bad. Sorry to anybody who loves LA. But you spend a couple days with just creative people, and learning how to do new things, and just doing some fun stuff. I mean, Adobe does a really good job at making you get a value for what you pay to go to it. So just my sort of pitch, if you have the ability to go next year, go in person. I know they have the online component, and that's definitely cool and definitely worth something. That's definitely worth checking out if you can't go in person. But being there, being in the room and seeing all that stuff, and like I said, just getting to hang out, and then the parties they have and the stuff they do is really, really cool. So definitely recommend it. Okay, well, I think we'll get started here. If anybody else shows up, I will just admit them. Let me close all this stuff. Excuse me. So I might be coughing a little bit. I'm just gonna give you fair warning. I've got this sinus thing going on, and it's driving me nuts. And so I will do my best to mute the mic if I have to cough, so I won't annoy anybody. But let's talk. Let's get into this meeting. So and this could be a short one, but it depends on how many questions you guys have, because it's just me really talking about what's new in Premiere. And there's a lot of cool stuff. So I'm going to share my screen. Look at that guy. Oh, geez. Okay.
Where'd you hire that actor?
Off the street, Craigslist.
Nice.
Looks like a lumberjack.
Okay. Let's not bag on my fashion sense, okay? It was holiday time. See the Christmas lights back there? I had to wear something themed.
Oh, understood.
Okay. No, that's not the first time I've gotten the lumberjack thing. So let's talk about text-based editing. So I think we've covered this before, and so I'm not going to kind of go into the nitty-gritty of text-based editing, but there are a few things that they've added that I wanted to show you guys how it works and let you ask some questions. And so I've got this clip of me, and so the backstory on this, just as a little side note, is that I filmed this in 2020, in December of 2020. I normally, as a company owner, send out little holiday cards to my clients. Obviously in 2020, nobody was at the office, so I wasn't sending out any cards to anybody. So I decided to make a little video message. So I did this here at my office upstairs in my little edit loft. And yeah, I didn't have a teleprompter. It was literally me doing this by myself. I think I did this in like 30 takes. So yeah. So I have a newfound appreciation for all the people that sit in front of me to have to talk on camera. But let's play it back here. Let's get my text window open here. Window, text. And let's dock this up here. There we go. Okay. So now we all know about text editing. So we all know that we can bring in clips in, and it transcribes them, and we've got the ability to cut and move stuff around and edit from here to build like a rough cut. We've seen that. We've covered it here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But there's two things that are kind of relatively new that are pretty cool. So if you see this, so if I play this clip. Hi everybody, from all of us here at 100 Acre Films, I just want blah blah blah. Okay, so let's say that I want to take this paragraph right here, and I wanted to move it. I want, and this, what I'm showing you, I kind of don't have the right timeline for this, because theoretically what I'm about to show you would work best when you've got a bunch of sound bites all laid out on a timeline. So you'd have me and maybe, Pat Espinoza on there, and Mark on there, and Bob on there, Bob Unger on there, and maybe some John Street down the line. And you've got all of our text here. So this workflow really works best for that. But unfortunately, I didn't have time to put that together. So we're just going to show it like this. But what you can do is I can highlight that just like you normally would. I'm going to go Control C. I'm going to put my timeline where I want it to be, or I just come up here in the panel, the text panel, and put my cursor right there. I'm going to Control V to paste. And you'll see down in my timeline and here, it copied and pasted that clip there. So now we're looking forward. So that bit is there. So in essence, if you've got, you can always move your clips around on the timeline if you want to. But what you can do now with the text panel is, instead of moving that clip somewhere down on your timeline where that soundbite is, you can just copy it and then paste it, or cut and paste it to where you want here in your text panel in your script. So it's another way to work. It's another way to use the text-based editing to sort of move your clips around, as opposed to just, trying to drag the clips and make a space and all that. You can just cut and paste right here in the text panel. So very, very handy way to work. So the excuse me, the next thing I'm going to show is I've got pauses in here, probably because I was trying to think about what I was going to say. And you can see I've got a pause here. That's what this little marker is. And I've got this pause over here. And what I can do is I can filter now for all of those pauses. So right here, I can choose pause. And now you'll see in my text panel, it's highlighted all of my pauses. And Lordy, do I have a lot of pauses. And I can easily now just delete those pauses, get rid of them all. So I'm going to click delete. You got two choices when you do this. You have extract and lift right here. Lift will basically just remove them and leave the space, whereas extract will pull it out, pull the pause out, and then pull the clips together. So, excuse me. So you can easily just fill that gap. So if I hit delete all, I'm going to extract them. Watch my timeline here. Let me come down here in my timeline and make it big. Okay, delete all. And you can see, boom, it pulled all those out, all the pauses. And so if you come down here and play it, let's get back to my picture here. 2020. What do you think? Okay, that was good. For the trolley, we'll do one more. 3, 2, 1. You know what my favorite thing is? I like this little soundbite right here. That was good. Who am I talking to? It was just me there. That was good. Anyway. So you can see it pulled all of the pauses out. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, if it pulls all the pauses out, I'm going to have a bunch of jump cuts in my video. Yes, you will. But this is good if you're going to lay down B-roll over top of your edits, or if you want to give morph cut a go and try that over some of your clips, you can do that. But it's a handy way just to pull all of your pauses out and just get all that stuff out of your timeline. It's really sort of helpful too for my workflow is to, I shoot an interview with a client and I send them a transcript, to edit from, but I want to trim it down. So what I'll do a lot of times is I'll try to get rid of just like dead periods where we're just sitting there waiting for a plane to fly over or something like that. This is really good for just condensing down your timeline to just the sound bites you need. It's a great start on that. I may not get everything, because if someone's talking off screen, it could pick that up and it won't pull that out. But, for just those dead points, it's a great way to get rid of them right away. So anyway, nice handy feature. Something that I've been asking Adobe for, and that I'd be curious to know from all of you what your opinions are, if you would find this helpful. But I am asking them to, like I mentioned, I send transcripts. So I bring everything in, transcode it, or transcribe it, and then send, you can export a script, as we talked about here. Just come up right here, export text file, and it creates a TXT of everything that it transcribed. And then they send that back, and usually with the stuff they don't want cut out. It would be great if they could cut all that stuff out, and then I could import in a Word doc, and the Premiere AI, whatever, Sensei thing would sort of reconcile those two and build a cut based on that Word doc that they sent me. It can look at all the text and say, hey, we recognize this text, this, whatever, and it can build that cut for me. So
pull out or identify filler words like and so, and pull those out.
Yeah, it pulls those out. I don't know that it can pull the ums and the ahs out yet. But it definitely pulls those out of the transcript. Although I think you have the ability to leave those in. I think that's something that's coming if it's not in here already. But yeah, I don't know that it can pull all the ums and the ahs out. So I haven't seen that yet.
You can't just search the text for and pull them out.
But that's what I'm saying. If you say this transcriber doesn't pick it up currently. I think they're going to have one that gets it more accurate, so you will have those in there, because I thought I saw a demo of that at some point. But currently it takes those out, and so you don't see those in here in this transcript.
Yeah, but we still hear them, unfortunately.
You do still hear them. Yeah, that's true. So, okay. So any other questions on the text-based editing before we move on here?
Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw somewhere that you can set your media now to import and transcribe as it imports. Is that correct?
Yes, you can.
Nice.
So when you're bringing it in, you mean?
Yes, when you're importing, it'll just transcribe, so you don't have to mess around with it.
Yes. So yeah, I should have mentioned that, and I think I just kind of forgot because we talked about that before. But yes, so in your import panel here, you have automatic transcription now, and I think they added this a version or two back.
Okay.
And so if you turn that on, excuse me, if you turn that on, everything that will come in will then be transcribed.
Nice.
So the thing that there's some parameters on it. So you have auto transcribe clips only in sequence, auto transcribe all imported clips. So you have the ability to sort of, choose which way you want to do. I do use that. I usually use it on the sequence. I don't do the all imported clips because a lot of what I shoot is B-roll and interviews. Sure, I don't need the B-roll transcribed.
Sure.
So a lot of times I'll just import all the B-roll and then come back, import it in the interviews, and then turn it on and let it transcribe all the interviews. Okay. So, but yes, you do have that ability. But the thing I will caution you about that is, depending upon how much stuff you're importing when you get started, and if you have a lot of, let's say you're shooting 5 interviews and they're each 30 minutes long. I mean, it could be. So I've had interviews that go longer than that. Mm-hmm. When you bring all that stuff in, and if, like Mark, you're a good person to talk to about this, because you and I both shoot on cameras that record 8 tracks of audio. It only records 4 of those tracks of audio, but there's 8 different tracks there. It will go through and look at all of those tracks, even the ones without audio, because it sees an audio track there. And so you've got this, these really long interviews that need to be transcribed. So it's using up processing power when you first get started. And then it's trying to go through and look at each audio track. And so it can really kind of slow down your process. Okay. So if you've got short clips, I think it's good to turn that on. If you have longer clips and you have a camera like Mark and I's that have multiple audio tracks and you only need one audio track, my advice is bring everything into Premiere, delete the audio tracks you don't need, and then tell it to transcribe once it's inside Premiere. I think
makes sense.
It'll work a little faster for you, and it'll work a lot faster for you, and it won't take up so much system resources right when you're getting started with your project, as it's awesome. Trying to do all this stuff, because it's also going to be doing something else that I'm about to talk about. So it's, using all this stuff when you start a new project can really sort of bog your system down until it does all of its work.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say delete those extra audio tracks, I assume you mean you unlink, wipe out the unused tracks, and relink.
Yes. So for instance, let me show you here. So I think this is a clip I didn't use. See, I kind of trimmed this one, but like if I drag this clip down, you'll see I've got, let's go here. So you can see I've got 3 audio tracks with audio, and then I've got these others down here. So what I do is I use the Alt key, hold down Alt, and then I just highlight the tracks I don't want, and then delete.
Okay.
And boom, they're gone.
That's different than what I would do, but I'm glad to learn a new technique.
Well, I got a tip I can give you too if you guys are interested.
Oh, yeah.
I can
I know your tip.
Take that clip And go up to the, let's see that in the project
Up here.
folder. Yeah, now right click on that clip and then do the modify and then audio channels. And then just tell it to go to mono, and then the number of clips. I usually just set it to mono and set it to 1.
Right.
Select that track, unless there's 2 tracks that you want to deal with, like a boom mic and a lavalier mic, but I would still select them as mono. So then they're individual clips that you can pan individually, and then you would select them. But so if you know you're only going to use 1 track, then just hit that number to 1 and then hit tab. And then it will type the number 1 instead of where it says 8. And now hit tab.
Oh, sorry.
And then it just blows out all those other tracks. And then when you drop them into the timeline, then you don't have to go and delete all that stuff later. Then it just brings it in with just that 1 track only.
Right.
Yeah. So if I drag this down now, you'll see it's just the 1.
Yeah. Now if you go back, if you went back and you selected 2 mono tracks, then it'll give you 2, or if it's 1 stereo or whatever you decide to pick. But I just get in the habit now whenever I start a project that I just always go in and I do that to everything that I'm working with.
Yeah, same here, Patrick. Yep,
so that you don't have a waste of tracks.
Exactly.
Yep.
Thanks for the tip.
It's another way to work.
Yeah.
I guess I like keeping all the tracks. What I usually do is, because the way I record audio, so like in an interview situation like this, one channel will have, will be set to 1 level. The second channel will be set to a level just lower.
Yeah, in case you overload.
In case there's overload. That actually happened today on the shoot I was on. The last guy came in to do an interview, and that guy, I think he was screaming for the entire city to hear. And I had to, like, mid-interview, start like dialing him down because he got way loud. And the guy looked at me, he goes, was he louder? I said, yeah, but don't worry, I got him backed up. And so that second audio track, definitely gonna come in handy there.
It's good. The problem with the method that I use is that only works if you do that before you drop a clip on the timeline. If the clip's already on the timeline, then it's there the way that it was before you set that.
Right. Yeah, you have to do that ahead of time. You have to set all that. And so that's just another way to work. So you have to find the workflow that works best for you. So all right, if there's nothing else on text-based editing, let's move on. So this is just a real quickie thing. So let's go switch over to my color settings. Now I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a color grader. I do some color correction. So I am not a color expert. So anybody who's in the group, who's in this meeting, who's more knowledgeable on color, and I say something that's wrong, please just let me know. But here we go. We got in the Lumetri color, we have these new settings. It's a whole new settings panel. And I actually forgot to turn this off because for my rehearsal here. So let's go ahead and let's turn this off. So if you shoot with log footage, as I do, and many of us in the group do, you can see when you bring it in, this is how it's usually going to look. And we talked about in a past meeting about the tone mapping that goes on in Premiere now, and the auto detect for log color space. And what they've done, they had all those settings kind of all over the place. You had to kind of go here to turn this on, go over there to turn this on. Well, with this new panel, they've tried to make it so that everything is here now. So within this panel, you can see I've got, auto detect log video color space. There should be one for auto tone mapping too. And for some reason, I'm blanking on where it's at, but it's auto tone mapping down here. So if I turn that off, yeah, that's fine. So I can turn the auto detect log video color space on. So now it's basically going to just say, oh, hey, you've got log footage. And you can see what it does. It tries to correct for it. It doesn't look great. But if I do the auto tone mapping, yes, that gets me a really good look. And basically, as I understand it, what's happening here is that Premiere is now looking at log footage when you do all this as log footage. It's not trying to convert it to 709. It's saying, hey, this is how log should look. This is log, and it's not supposed to look flat. It just looks flat because we're looking at things usually in a 709 color space. So this is how it should look. And then with the tone mapping, it sort of, kind of balances things out and sort of, I don't want to call it a LUT because it's not really a LUT, but it sort of, looks at the image and then figures out, okay, here's how it should sort of look. So that's kind of what's going on under the hood there. But you now have all of these settings. You can see you've got some new settings down here for exposure and highlight saturation. If you need to adjust those, you can apply that to all the clip instances. So this is sort of working as a master clip effect, in the sense that, you know, if you've got this clip, this is like an interview clip and it's spread out over your timeline, you just do it to one clip, and then every instance of that same clip, it will color correct, it will fix. So yeah, the auto tone mapping I found is a really handy tool to have. You know, I go back and forth between shooting log and on my camera as Cinetone. But yeah, when I shoot log now, I always turn this on. It works really, really great.
I noticed that on there, it says like on the use media color space, it's showing Sony S log. So does it somehow know that automatically?
Yes, it does. So it detects what kind of S log you have, or what kind of log you have, and then it will correct for that. It'll list that. So if you had Canon in there, and unfortunately, I don't think I have any Canon on this laptop, so to sort of show how that would work. But yeah, it should auto detect it.
So you don't need
go ahead.
If you don't mind, it would be awesome. I need the bag of romaine hearts from up there.
Okay, so we're gonna keep going because I think somebody left their mic on.
Does everybody get those bag of kidney hearts?
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk about here, and this doesn't impact me usually as a Windows guy, but for you Mac folks, somebody who's Mac can probably explain this a little bit better than I can, but apparently it's okay, James. Apparently I don't understand what's going on with QuickTime, but there's a gamma shift, or there's a gamma issue with QuickTime Player on Macs that makes the videos not play back quite looking as you make it look inside Premiere. And they now have in this viewer gamma, you can see they've got 1.96 QuickTime. So if you know your videos are going to be viewed on QuickTime after this, you can add that to it, and that will give you a better representation of how they will look in QuickTime on a Mac. So any of you Mac folks out there who understand this issue better, or know if I explained it wrong, please let me know. But as I understand it, that's new, and for a lot of Mac people, that's huge.
Now, is this all just for preview, or is this actually the first step in color correction?
Well, what do you mean? All of this, like using this panel?
Right. Are you using this so you have a decent looking picture as you edit, but then you're going to hand the raw off to your color correction? Or is this your first step in the color correction process?
For me, this would be my first step in color correction, because, you know, let's say, so I've got this image here, and if I like the way this looks, you know, I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to use this and export out with this. So I won't do any color correction. If I go, hey, this looks good to me, everything looks clean, the whites look white, you know, the image looks, you know, I don't need to make it look all stylized. This would be all I would need to do. So in a sense, yes, but you could still, but, you know, anytime you do color correction, you want to get the image sort of looking like this, you know, getting it clean, getting it back to sort of, you know, a standard look, and then you would give it to somebody to sort of color grade from that point on. So does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, basically, this can be the starting point, but if you're handing it off to a pure colorist, they're going to want the raw files to begin with, and they'll start over from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. They may. So it depends on what your workflow is. Yeah, if color grading is part of your workflow and you're going to be handing it off, you could just turn all this stuff on just to sort of have something to look out, so it doesn't look, you know, like that while you're editing, you know, and if you don't want to add a LUT onto it. You know, so this just gets you a good pleasing image. And then, yeah, you can, you know, once if your color person, you know, works in Resolve, obviously this isn't going to come through. They're going to see the raw footage, you know, inside of in Resolve, and they'll just grade it from there. So all right, any other questions on this? Any Mac people that think that I got the QuickTime thing? Is anybody affected by that QuickTime issue, by the way?
Yeah, I get it sometimes where things don't, when you play it back, it doesn't look the same as what it looks like when you're watching it on your timeline in Premiere. Yeah. But then I've also had issues too, where that with log footage, for some reason, when you do an export, it doesn't apply the LUT files to it, and the final version comes
It
out
doesn't
washed
apply
out.
the
But-
LUT file, or it doesn't apply this auto tone mapping.
well, no, I've had both of those issues before, but the tone mapping thing will help definitely, I think, when you're, because if you're doing color correction and you're looking at the monitor in Premiere, and then you see it later on and playing on a QuickTime player, it does look different sometimes.
Yeah. I know. One thing I'll say about exporting. So if you use auto tone mapping, you have to make sure that you have it turned on inside. If you export in Media Encoder and not straight out of Premiere, you have to have the auto tone mapping and the detect log turned on inside Media Encoder as well. Because if you don't, it won't export. It'll just export out flat. And
That's probably what the problem was then.
yeah.
Listen,
I've got
didn't know
burned
that.
by that as well. So that's how I learned. So I learned that lesson.
If you render it, will it play that out regardless, or will it still strip that even if you're using rendered files?
If you're using if you put effects on here and then hit render.
Well, if you've rendered, let's say you've put this auto tone thing on it and stuff, and you've rendered it out, and so you've got rendered files now. When you put it through, when you send it to encoder, will it double that up, or will it strip the Lumetri color thing and then still out of the render? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I kind of, if I follow you correctly. So basically you're asking, like, if I added some effects on here and then rendered the effects, and basically it's like, is Premiere using the render files? Is kind of what you're asking.
Particularly for those two things that you were talking about, the auto detect, the thing. So if you let's say you've gone through and done the auto detect thing for the color, what you just did there,
right,
the tone mapping and stuff, and then you've rendered it in the project, does that become part of that render file? And when you go to
yes, yeah, whenever you make a render file for anything, it creates a separate file, either as a QuickTime file or as like an MPEG file, depending on what settings you have set up. But it makes a separate file so that when you play back, it plays back those render files. But when you export, if you have QuickTime files that are your render files, and then you export and you choose to use the render files, or the I think it's, where's the option called in here? But you have the ability to say, hey, I want to use those render files to speed up my encode. Then yes, you can do that. Let me see where it is in here. I think I have to be in QuickTime to see that. Hold on, let me QuickTime. Where is it? There's some setting in here where you can choose to use your render files, and I don't see where it is now, so I'm forgetting where it is. But basically, anytime you encode, Premiere is going to redo everything. So unless you tell it to use those render files that you created, Premiere is always going to go back and sort of redo everything and then spit it back out. So it won't redo the auto tone mapping, essentially, is what you're asking.
Okay.
So any other questions before we move on?
But this is the first step that's applied in the stack of color correction. If you do your own other things later, this is the first.
Yeah, this kind of sits, this is sort of like, that master clip setting kind of stuff. This sits above everything, and then you can come over here to your edit tab, and then you can do everything on top of this. So yeah, any adjustments that I do are going to be are going to be on top of the auto tone mapping. So all right, one other thing I wanted to kind of talk about is, this is more of an audio thing, so I'm gonna come over to my audio tab. So excuse me, we all know that audio or clips, if you use the auto ducking, if you use the remix feature, if you're trying to go in and clean up and use the essential sound panel, everything has, the clips get tagged. They're either dialogue, music, sound effect, or I think the fourth one is ambience. Now, when everything comes in, when you import in the clips, you pick all your clips, you import them in, you create your new project. Premiere is going to auto tag those clips. So it's going to look at all of your audio and say, this is audio, or this is dialogue, this is music, this is sound effects, and it's going to pre-tag all that stuff. So you don't really have to do it now. You can see that this clip right here was tagged dialogue, and I didn't assign it that. Now I can clear that audio type if it got it wrong and say, okay, it needs to be reassigned to something else. But if I brought in a music track, Premiere would look at it, see that it's music, and auto tag it as music. So it's kind of saving you a step. Now, I haven't found a way to turn this off. And getting back to the comment we made about transcribing stuff, again, it's going to look at every track. So if you've got tons of audio tracks, it's going to try to analyze each of them to figure out what's there. And so, it can be a little bit kind of a pain in the neck in that it's going to try to want to tag all that stuff. It goes fairly quick, but you do see the little wheel up here spinning around as it's working, trying to auto tag everything. So, it's just something to sort of keep in mind, as you're importing in your clips, that's going to be happening in the background. I could swear that they put in a way to turn it off. I thought I remember asking that at one point, but I don't remember what they said, and I can't find the switch to toggle that off. So I'm going to ask my Adobe peeps again and find out how to turn that off in case you don't want to auto tag stuff. Because like I said, it can be just a bit of a time suck, but it's a handy feature to have. It's nice having all that stuff pre-done. Now you can just go in and just start, doing stuff. You don't have to worry about, oh, did I tag it? Why isn't this working? Whatever. So anyway, so that's something that's happening in the background. Something else, let me come out of this mode that's new. And let me show you in your effects controls. So they have a new thing in here, manage video effects. So these are all the effects that I have on my machine, on this system. And when you look at it that way, it's like, holy crap, I got a lot of them. But what this allows you to do now is turn them off. So if you're having issues in Premiere, it's crashing, it's not working right, something's going on, there's very well could be a plugin. For instance, I've got right here on the top, No Light Factory. This is an old plugin. I haven't updated it in years. And every time I was opening up Premiere, it was giving me some kind of error message, or it was having issues with it. And so I don't know why I just didn't uninstall it, but I just turned it off, and now I don't get that message. So it's turning it off. So if you're having some issues with Premiere and something's not rendering, something's not playing right, or you try adding an effect and it crashes, or some other stuff, you could try going in and turning off some of these filters. It really does make a difference. And it can help you troubleshoot and diagnose problems that you might be having. I get lots of calls from people with having issues with Premiere, and a lot of times it all comes back to either plugins that aren't working, that are too old, user error, or system deficiencies. Those 9 times out of 10, those seem to be the issues, the underlying issue. There are times where Premiere is just crapping out, and that does happen. But yeah, this tool combined with the system compatibility report, running this to see if you have any outdated drivers, things like that, are really good things to do if you're starting to have issues with Premiere. Check both of these things, try them, and see if that solves your problem. So handy new things in there. Okay, next, let's go back to my import tab. So something that they've added new, and we actually got to go back to the home tab for this. So something they've added new. So if we create a new project, you can see you've got your project name, project location, project template. So they have these new templates that you can choose from. You can add your own, if you want, but if you want to have just a standard template project, you've got social media, broadcast, let's just click the standard. And I'm just going to call this template preview. I can type here. And so what it's going to do is you can see it creates this new project, and it's created these folders for me: footage, audio, graphics, music, photos. It's created 2 timelines for me, one at 1080, one at 4K UHD. And basically it's just a template, just a project template, just to get yourself started. So folder to put your audio, folder to put your footage, all that kind of stuff. You longtime members have heard me say this over and over again, so I'm not going to belabor the point. A good editor has a system. I don't care what your system is, just have a system. Have some sort of organizational method that you use to work with your projects. It will make your editing go faster. If you don't be the person that just saves files willy-nilly all over your system, for the love of Pete, don't save your files on your desktop. If I had a nickel for every time I've gotten a project from some other editor, and when I open it up, stuff's not relinking, and I always hate it when I look to see where was the last file, the last save location. Desktop. It's like, oh, not getting those files back. So just have a system. But this template system sort of is a good way to organize your projects and to kind of start saving stuff. And you can see here too, I can rearrange all this and change it however I want to make it. And then under File, you have Save as Template. So you can create your own template and then just save that and then use it when you start every new project. You can choose that template and boom, everything's laid out and it's right there ready to go for you. So
oh, I like that. That's nice.
So yeah, so template, I mean, everybody kind of has their own system. This allows you to sort of develop your own template, save it, use it over and over again. But like I said, have a system, please. So all right, let me close this project. We'll go back here. Okay. This is a fun one. All right, so for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you've already seen this, but I'm going to show you how we did it. And Mark Mason knows about this because I showed him. He was with me on this shoot, and I showed him what we did here. So we did this interview, and you'll see this big white car out here that the client was none too happy about, and neither were we. And we couldn't find the person who owned it, so we just kind of said, "Well, we don't ever really say this, but in the back of our minds, we're like, we'll fix it in post." So what we did is I was able to go in and put a different background back here in this space, and I will show you how I did it. So let's find a frame that we like here. So this one works pretty well. So I'm going to go back a little bit. Let's line it up right here. All right. I'm going to save. I'm going to use the export frame tool right here. If you don't see this in your system, it's because you need to click on this little plus button, and you've got all these buttons, these extra little buttons you can add, and you just need to drag it down so that you can use it. But it's a handy tool to have. So I'm gonna click OK. So I'm gonna basically take this frame and export it just into a still frame, and JPEG is fine. Okay, now I just gave a whole rant about not saving things to your desktop. I'm gonna save this to my desktop, so nobody roast me. This is for the demo purposes. If this were a real project, I wouldn't save it there. So save it to my desktop. Now let's go over to Photoshop.
And by the way, you're tripod locked down, right?
Yes. So for this to work, you've got to be tripod locked down. We're not quite at the point yet where you can do this on a shaky cam. All right, so Photoshop's going to open up. And let's open that file up. Let's go to my desktop here. Let's use this one. That's my file. That's my file. Okay. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little marquee tool here. Oh, first thing I'm going to do is unlock this. So unlock the layer. And then I'm going to drag over that whole area. And I'm going to make sure I've got some feather to it. So I've got my feather set to 25. That looks good. Now I'm going to, there should be a little box that opens up. That says generate fill, and I'm not seeing it for some reason, but it's no big deal. I can come here and choose generate fill. Where is it? Where is it? Why don't I see it here? Content refill, generate fill. Oh, nuts.
It's right there.
Is it? Okay, generative fill.
Generative
There it
fill.
is. Thank you. So I'm going to type in park with trees. And we'll click generate. And it's going to think about stuff here. Now, this is kind of tricky because you've got the depth of field, the out of focus stuff. Like, how well is it going to match? How's it going to look? Is it going to account for that? You've got the poles here with the window, all that stuff. Is the AI going to work? I mean, come on. We all know it's going to work because I wouldn't do the demo if it didn't. All right. Now, down here, I've got 3 choices. So that looks okay. That looks okay, but let's check this one. Oh, no, I like that one. I like the trees. That looks pretty good. And that one looks pretty good too. I don't know.
Yeah, look at that. Wow.
I think this one's my favorite though. So you can see here, all it did is it just created that layer. So now all I have to do is click save. And let's go back to my project file here. I'm not going to save it to the desktop. So that would be wrong. And let's see, we'll just call it this one. And then we come back into Premiere and let's import that in. Now I don't need the whole thing. I'm just going to do the individual layers, and I'm just going to do the park with trees. And then all I have to do is just drag it on top.
So what inspires?
Now you can see there's a little bit of a blending issue. Like the color is a little bit off, so you might want to just add, do a little bit of color correction to blend it a little bit better. But like I don't know if it's let's add a little lumetri to it and see if we can blend it just a bit. So if I just try like there. There we go.
To me, I think there's a couple things. So the first is just knowing and reading.
So how's that? You got a whole new background.
Wow. Well, I'm just shocked that it knew to keep the frames and to make it blurry. It just knew.
Yeah.
That just phenomenal.
Yeah. So
wow.
Now, if your talent moves a little bit to the left, he's going to disappear, right?
He will, yes, he will disappear into it. So I was real careful while we were filming because I was going to try to do this. I knew in the back of my head that this is what I was going for. So I made a point to sort of frame him, and he never moved past this bar.
Never did.
I knew that I could frame that whole area out as long as he kept his head where he kept it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, the possibilities of this are just endless. I mean, it really is. I mean, you can now, I could easily just take, let's go back. I don't know if I really had time to do this. I didn't really plan for it. So this goes horribly awry. Oh, well, we didn't really plan for it. But, we could easily just sort of like crop around him and then expand out and create a whole new environment sort of, around him and, replace all of this area with that. With something new and this wall with that. I mean, we could just sort of like, just depends on how far we want to go with things. It's really sort of the sky's the limit at this point. But as Bob pointed out, you have to have a locked off tripod for this effect to really work. Right now, there is stuff getting back to Max. For those of you who watch the sneaks, how many people watch sneaks, by the way, at Max? Okay, so one of the things that Adobe showed was a tool that they're working on so I'll tell you that they showed 2 different demos. So they had a guy walking in a suit, with a jacket on, with no tie. And they drew an area around his chest like this, kind of, where the jacket was. And in a little box like he had in Photoshop, they said, add a tie. And it added a tie to the guy. And you got to realize that it was a video clip. The guy was walking and the tie looked perfect. And then they changed the color of the tie to red from blue. And the guy walked from sunlight into shadow, and the AI was smart enough to be able to do the lighting change as it moved. you know, so that kind of stuff is coming. I mean, this is just step one. Being able to swap out this background for this is literally step one in where we're going over the next few years with AI. And what we'll be able to do inside of Premiere.
Is there a remove background in the video like they do in the still?
Well, I mean, we don't have that now, but you do have. I'm about to show you the new Rotobrush tool, and that's one way to do that. But they don't have that inside Premiere now. But I mean, I'm sure that's something that's coming at some point. So, speaking of which, if there's no other questions on this, I'll move on. All right, let's do it.
Anything to get rid of the drudgery of Roto.
So, speaking of which, they've created Rotobrush 3. And Rotobrush 3 is a much quicker version of the Rotobrush tool. It's in After Effects 2024. And so I've got this clip here of this guy. I shot this a long time ago downtown. He's one of those sign spinner guys. And he shot at 240 frames per second, spinning his sign. Pretty cool. The whole clip is really pretty cool. I just happened to catch this guy, and he bounced the sign off of his leg. It was really cool. But let's roto him. Use the new Rotobrush tool. So I'm going to come up, click on Rotobrush, and then I'm just going to paint around him. Kind of go up around the sign. And kind of come down. Oops, I probably will have to fix that, but that's okay. It's going to come up here and come back up. We'll see how it does on first pass. So it's not too bad. We got a lot of the street here, but we can get that out. Let's just refine it just a little bit more here. And if anybody doesn't know how Rotobrush works, we can talk about that later, but I'm assuming everybody kind of has a rudimentary knowledge of Rotobrush and how it does its magic here and what I'm doing. So I didn't want this to become like a Rotobrush tutorial so much as a look what you can do now with it. Let me get that area out of there. Okay, I think that looks pretty good.
Got a lot of road to your left.
Oh, do I? Oh, yes, I do. Thank you, Bob. We'll get rid of that.
For some reason, my power supply is dying on my computer, so I'm going to switch to my phone here. So,
all right, let's do this last little bit, and then we'll test it out here. Okay, I think that's good enough for this, for the purposes of this demo. I'm just getting nitpicky now. Okay, I think that's good. So let's Rotobrush that. Okay. See, you can just keep going. You just nitpick. All right, so that looks pretty good. So now all I have to do is I'm going to hit my space bar, and it's going to start working. Now, one thing I want to keep an eye on is the other side of this sign coming out. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to go back a bit because it's not picking that up. So I'm just going to tell it, hey, you need to get the sign, dude. Now let's hit that space bar again. Get the sign, dude. There we go. So now it's going to pick up that sign. And you can see, I can already see it's got to get this too. There we go. And it's not, you can see it's not getting now, so we'll just tell it to get that. There might be another little spot it's missing, but we'll just let this go. So while it's doing its thing, you can see it's doing pretty good. And you can see up here in your Rotobrush settings, I've got it set to version 3. You can go back to version 1, classic, or 2, but why would you? But look at it. It's holding that pretty good. And it's working pretty quick.
A lot faster than I do it by hand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it may not get every single frame right, but it's going to get most of them right. And it's doing, 80 to 90% of the work for you. So let's just stop it there and let's play it back and let's see how we do. So let's come to my composition frame here. Okay, so yeah, remember it lost that opening part, but let's see how it did. There we go. Once we turned that back on. I mean, that's for just doing this like right now with, you know, however long it took to do that, that's pretty good. So that's the power of Rotobrush. So, and you can feather the edge. I mean, you can get in there and kind of, you know, we could try to make it look a little bit prettier if you wanted to. You know, but again, for just doing a quick roto, that's pretty awesome. So, you know, we can go back. Like I said, I would go back and fix that, but it's not too shabby. So that is Rotobrush 3.0 inside After Effects. Just out of curiosity, how many people dive into After Effects on a regular basis? I don't really have a show of hands here, but I mean, don't we have the little I guess we don't have the little like hand thingies or something like that to raise hands. I'll just assume you all use After Effects on a occasional basis.
Occasionally, come on in.
Okay.
Enough distance between the times that I forgot what I learned the last time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of the same way. All right. So let's see. I got someone from chat. Yes, Ellen. Okay, good. All right. So I got one more thing here to show you guys. Let's I'm gonna go to the beta version of Premiere. So I'm gonna shut this down.
How long do we have to wait for this?
Oh, Bob, you're always such a bright ray of sunshine.
Oh, no. I just don't want to drool too much. And
No. This will this beta will boot up here. Oh, you mean for it to come out? You mean?
yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant for like it to boot up.
No. I'm just saying, is this something that we're looking at a year from now or next month?
You know, okay. So what I'm about to show you guys, I don't know what the time frame is on this. So, you know, my hope is that it comes out in the next drop or two. You know, they're usually releasing stuff like once a month or once every other month. So my hope would be that this would come out, you know, within another month or so. But I don't know. They haven't really announced when they're going to release this publicly. So, but yeah, you know, I want it now. So. So, okay. So it is the audio enhancement feature, which we've been using. If you know about Adobe Podcasts, look at this beta. If you're familiar with Adobe Podcasts, it's a great way to clean up your audio. And they've now are including it inside your Essential Sound panel, inside Premiere. So I'm going to play this clip. Mark, you might recognize this clip, seeing how you shot it. But this is just the camera mic. It isn't, you know, it isn't a good mic, just the camera mic across the room. So let's listen to it.
Involved in drug development for about 30 years now, but I can still recall my early pediatric training.
So you all can hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
Beautiful.
So
Yeah.
now we've got
It's
enhanced.
in the bathroom, right?
You don't need to do anything. It sounds great.
Yeah. So now we've got enhanced speech. So now all I have to do is select the clip. It's already marked as dialogue because it auto tagged. I'm just click enhance. It's going to initialize. It's going to look at that audio clip and analyze it. And then it will do its magic. Now, something to keep in mind is, well, let me let it do its thing and then I'll tell you about this. So
Will
let's
it fix air conditioning as well, or just the acoustics?
It's more of, I think, just for the acoustics. So, I mean, you know, if you have air conditioning issues, there's other plugins I would recommend to get rid of that kind of stuff. This is mostly for just fixing bad, you know, fixing the voice, you know.
Involved in drug development for about 30 years now, but I can still recall my early pediatric training.
Okay, so just so you can hear it with and without, it's still, you could use a little bit more, but here's
Development for about 30 years now, but I can still
okay, why isn't it
recall my early pediatric training.
did it do it? Why doesn't it sound like it's working?
And one of the really interesting, fun parts was
There we go. Okay, so I think I turned it down and it needed to go up. So you can see the difference between Adobe Podcast and this. Adobe Podcast, you basically were uploading audio and then it would just give you audio back. You had no control. This actually has a slider, a mix amount. So if I play this back, watch, you can hear, I'm going to move the slider and you can hear it kind of go from bad to good.
in drug development for about 30 years now, but I can still recall my early pediatric training. And one of the really interesting, fun parts
Let me see if I can turn it up a little bit more.
was being on neurology rotations. But that was 30 years ago, and back then, actually was a little bit frustrating. So back then,
Wow. That's impressive.
Development for about
Now you have to be careful with this mix amount because if you
about
go
30
too
years
far-
now, but I can still recall my early pediatric training. And one of the really interesting, fun parts was being on our neurology rotations.
so you
But
can,
that was 30.
you can hear it sounds good, but it kind of would break up a little bit because you're pushing it too hard. So, that's why you have to kind of strike that balance. And you can use this to clean up background stuff too. I mean, if you have a lot of background noise and, and you want to get rid of all of that, you could try running it through here and it'll try to clean that up. I guess for me, it's like, I've got other plugins that do that and do it really well. This for me is just to restore that bad audio, to make that voice sound, as good and as on mic as you can get it to be. But that
was being on our neurology rotations. But that was 30 years ago, and back then, actually was a little bit frustrating. So back then,
because you can tell even this,
so
it's cleaning up that background noise.
I've been involved in drug development for about 30 years now, but I can still recall my early pediatric training. And one of the really interesting, fun parts was being on our neurology rotation.
All right, buddy. So yeah, so that's an enhanced speech, and again, this is in beta, the latest beta drop, which you can download. Anybody can, and it can live with the current version of Premiere or whatever Premiere version you're on. And you can just drop in your audio and clean it up. Now, something to keep in mind is you'll see right here, enhanced speech. It is an effect that is going on the clip. It's not, it's not saving it. It's not making a new clip. It's literally just an effect. So if you were to hand this project, or let's say you have a project that you're going to hand off to somebody that's going to do Pro Tools work on it, and you use this effect on a bunch of audio, when your Pro Tools guy gets it, it's going to sound, like crap for him because the effect is going to be gone. So all you would really need to do is just, click on, right click and choose render and replace and create a new audio file for those audio clips that you restored. And then it'll use that instead, and then that could get passed on to your audio guy to use, as opposed to just the really bad audio. So something to keep in mind depending upon your workflow with this effect. But either way, very, 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 very cool. So
does that work on pretty much any register? Like, what if you had a woman, a soprano, or somebody?
Yeah, it should work on anybody. I'd used this extensively I did a project where we did all remote interviews. They were all with customers for a client of mine. And they were all Zoom. We didn't use Zoom. We used a different recording software, but we used, online interviews and recorded them. And none of them had a good mic. They all just used the mic that's built into their laptop. And at some of the cases, it was like a family, and they were sitting, like, I swear, like 15 feet back from the laptop, so you could see the whole family there, or like 10 feet back. And it sounded really bad. And even the client said to me, she goes, "Is there anything you can do about that?" And I knew about this, and I said, let me give it a shot. And boom, it took that really bad remote interview, online, interview audio, and it cleaned it right up. And client was amazed at how good it sounded. So it is, this is really kind of, I don't know, like game-changing type stuff, but it's a huge help. I mean, it's also not an endorse, it's like, oh yeah, just don't worry about audio anymore. You need to worry about audio. But if something happens and, all that you end up with for some reason, because your audio guy drops the ball and it's all
Interesting, fun parts was being on
it sounds like that, well, you're not entirely cooked here anymore. Now you can maybe save the shot. So
Fix it in post.
Yeah, yes. We're getting more and more tools that allow us to fix it in post too easily.
And you said this is part of the beta?
This is part of beta, yeah, right now. But like I said, I would be surprised if it didn't hit the release version by the end of the year. Let's put it that way. But I don't know. I have no inside information on that. So they could make us wait till NAB. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about transcribe, if that's something we can go back to.
Yeah, totally.
Have you noticed or had an occasion for a transcribe into Spanish and how accurate that may be?
Yes, I have done that. And funny enough, I did that late last year. And the Spanish I found was more accurate at the time than the English was.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know why, and it could have just been luck. It just could have been the scripts we're using. But I did a job for a client where they had people on camera reading Spanish or doing Spanish and English, and I was able to transcribe them both, or inside Premiere, and the Spanish held up, for some reason, much better than the English did.
So Spanish, it usually takes a little longer to say than it does in English. How do you deal with that?
Well, in what way?
Well, for example, we've got a project coming up, 47 videos. They want voice actors for that, Spanish voice actors. And for them to articulate what is actually already been said in English will take them a little longer. So I'll need to either take it into Adobe and change the pitch, maintain the pitch and change the speed, or
you have, yes. So yeah, I did a project a while back where we had to do 14 languages. And yeah, we ran into that, and there was a bit of, I worked with an agency who was able to sort of somewhat match. They provided files for me, and so they were somewhat able to match the spacing, and we kind of knew, and I knew that going in because it wasn't the first time I'd done that. So we just put the videos together with space at the beginning and ends of the the shots to allow for that, for that extra bit of for other languages. You just kind of go into it knowing that you might have to add a little bit on the head or the tail, to sort of fit it all in. So yeah,
unfortunately, these are pre-produced, so we've got to deal with what's already been done.
Yeah, if it's already pre-produced and you have to cram it in, then yeah, it gets tough. You have to sort of speed things up without changing the pitch too much.
Right.
To sort of cram it in.
But you found the transcription to be fairly accurate.
Yeah, I did. We had to do subtitles for that. That's the reason we ran the transcription, to create the Spanish subtitles. And yeah, it nailed them. There was only a couple of words I remember that we had to go back and correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Still, a lot of times in my experience, the people that do it professionally do a different translation. The translation is the thing that makes the length different.
Right.
And a lot of times corporations that are doing it translate for printed word, like for the web.
Right.
And the way they do the translation is extra wordy. So especially between Spanish and English. And if they know that they're doing it for broadcast, for example, they will do the right translation facility will do a more condensed translation so that it doesn't take up so much extra time.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just to throw that out too. It's there's a company that I work with. They are not cheap. I will say that up front, but they do amazing work, and they really can sort of do everything that you need. I think I might have recommended them before, but their Argo translation, they're back, I think, in Minnesota or someplace like that. They're definitely worth reaching out to if you have translation issues, because the big project that I talked about with 14 different languages, I basically gave them the script that was written in English. They did the translation into each of the languages. They created the SRT files for the captions, for everything. And then they had voiceover people that were able to then do the voiceover. And they were able, in a lot of cases, not every case, but they were able to match they did the post work to speed it up to make it fit into how long it took in the English. There was only a couple instances where I had to go in and lengthen a shot a bit or something like that to make it work. But it was, it was just a huge help, but again, if you don't have budget for it, and like I said, unfortunately they're not cheap, but
How do they price it?
They price it kind of, I think it's by the word, I think. But different languages are, for some reason, different languages seem to cost. Some languages were more expensive than others, and I don't remember how they broke it all down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's worth. I mean, they give you free quotes, so it doesn't hurt to send them. Reach out to them and send them your script and say, hey, how much would it cost? And see, it may work out for you.
Good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an AI lip sync for that now too?
An AI lip sync?
So that the lips move with a new language.
Well, they showed something like that at Adobe Sneaks. So that's another thing that Adobe is working on, where that demo in particular was a case where they had audio. It's like they had, like, Bob, if you were to record some audio and you were on camera, it could create a translate a different language version in your voice, and then they called it, I think it was Project Dub or something like that. It didn't match the lips, although there is software out there that will do that. Somebody after that demo showed me that software where AI will make your mouth adjust to whatever the translation is. That's a little scary, but yeah, that's out there as well too.
Come a long way from Mr. Ed.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it really is a case of, the stuff that's coming down the pike with AI is, the stuff we'll be able to do in 3 to 4 years will just, it will seem crazy. Like, right. It'll just be unbelievable what we can do. It's just moving that fast.
That's what's scaring the actors.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother discussion, but yeah, but I guess I look at it from what we'll be able to do with our stuff, for our projects, the ability, like I did with that background shot, the ability to fix little problems like that, where before, we would have said, well, we just have to, figure something out, or, do rotoscope it out and put a new background in, or what. It's like, no, you saw how fast I was able to fix that, and granted, I kind of knew when I was filming kind of what I was going to do and how, so I set myself up to be in a better position to be able to do that. But, the things that we'll be able to fix, the problems we'll be able to solve in post, really will be just like mind-blowing stuff of what we'll be able to create. So, I guess I tend to be more the optimist. It's like, I just think about all the cool stuff I'll be able to do at that point.
Oh, I'm with you. I agree. It's just amazing what drudgery that can get rid of. You could have done that background plate yourself, but it would take you a couple hours in Photoshop to redraw all those plants in the background and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. As a kid who grew up, watching documentaries about, loving Industrial Light and Magic and all the stuff that they did and, or that they do, it's like, I feel like I'm, I actually said this to somebody at Max. I said, I'm not at that level yet, the tools that I have, but I'm not that far away from some of the basic tools, the stuff that they used to do, that was like matte paintings and a lot of that other stuff. It's like, yeah, we're at that point now where it's like, I could have AI just generate that stuff. And it's just basically creating a matte painting like they used to do. Once the 3D animation becomes that much simpler, and once you can easily just, put in moving camera or backgrounds with a moving camera, it's going to be a whole different world. So, all right. Any other questions? That's all I got. Any other questions? All right. Well, we have only one other thing to do tonight. Let me close all this stuff down. Save out, change. No, I don't save that.
Well, this is not a question. I might tell some people about my DCP experience.
Oh yeah.
That basically I did a short, and we wanted to show it in theaters. So we wanted 4K for digital cinema projection. So I wound up renting the driver in order to create the 4K output. And the 2K output's already built into Premiere and it worked fine. And I was able to notice, oh, look, I can play that back, the video portion of it, because it breaks it into a audio track and video track. And so I was able to play back the 2K with existing tools. But then when I went to try to play back the 4K, I couldn't play it back with anything. So I thought it wasn't working. It turns out there's some sort of encoding or whatever. So you'll need a special playback tool in order to play it back. but it worked great in the theater, and it made a visual difference between the 2K and the 4K projection.
There you go. That's good to know, because yeah, I've only made 2K DCPs, and I've been always able to check them inside Premiere. So it's good to know that even if I paid for the 4K upgrade, I wouldn't be able to view it in Premiere, I guess, to check
So
it.
I've asked the people that rented the thing, but they have, you can get the package good for a month. It'd be nice if they included the playback so you could verify that it's created correctly.
Yeah.
You don't have to have your first showing in the theater and say, oops.
Yeah. All right. Any last questions or comments before we get to the big raffle prize? All right.
This is Ava.
Yeah.
I've been here the whole time watching, and it's been great. I love it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem.
I'm the person who works at Illumina, and I was making videos.
Oh yeah.
Videos for the customers and tech support. So, but anyways, I was curious about what kind of camera you used for your footage, or what you typically use there.
I normally shoot with a Sony FX9. That's my go-to camera. It's currently in the shop. It took a little spill the last shoot. But yeah, the FX9 is my go-to camera. Yeah, I'm a big Sony guy, so the FX9, the FX6 are probably like my two go-to cameras I would recommend to people. But if you're more of a DSLR kind of person, I would say the Sony FX3 would be a good one to look at. But I don't know any of the other DSLR cameras to shoot with. John Street would probably be a good person to ask that too, because I think he shoots more with DSLRs than I do.
What about like Blackmagic cameras? Is that a good one?
You know what? I know a few people who use Blackmagic who really like it, but I will defer to anybody here who has more. I don't have a lot of experience with Blackmagic, so I did one project with them, and we shot Blackmagic RAW, and everything looked great. So I don't have any complaints about it. It's more of just that's those cameras aren't my jam. I just don't like them that much. But if there's anybody here who does have anything to say about Blackmagic, go ahead and chime in.
Craig Bentley's here. Craig, I believe, owns one too.
Yeah, I've just got the first generation Pocket Cinema camera 4K. It works great for what I use it for. And actually, Pat and Mark and I are on a shoot on Friday, where we'll be using two of those.
There you go.
So, and then John Street, it looked like you were going to say something there too.
Well, I was just going to say also that Pat Espinosa has been shooting probably even more than I have with the smaller form factor mirrorless cameras, right?
That's true.
Yeah, I'm on Canon though. I use a Canon R5, but they're very similar to the Sony A7 series cameras. It's just kind of an apples or oranges thing. I didn't want to have to reinvest all my lenses again into Sony's when I already had that much money invested in Canon glass. So I've just stuck with Canon. But the Sony or the Canon R5, R6 is another good one. That's a less expensive option than the R5, that for, I think, like web stuff, like what you're saying you're probably doing might be a better fit for you than the R5, and probably about half the price. And otherwise, yeah, maybe like an A7 series camera would be, what to look for if you're going to go with the Sony route. There's also Panasonic. I think those are the GX or GH series cameras. Or whatever. Yeah.
I think
Mark,
I had a Lumix.
Mark Mason, if you're a Sony mirrorless guy as well, right?
Yeah, I've got the A7S II, and great. They're great cameras. You can't go wrong with the Sony. I like the build. I like the ergonomics of it. They've got the 4 out is now not the 4S, but the 4 is out. People seem to go with that. There's a argument between that and the F3 reasons, plus and minuses for them. They have again plus and minuses depending if you're doing more still shooting or more video shooting. And if you need a still camera and occasionally shoot video, or video camera and occasionally shoot stills, there's options for getting for both. But yeah, I do like the Sonys.
Eva, I guess I would say it seems like there's a little bit of a division between people that are using small format cameras that are meant for the vlogging community, really that are one step simpler than people that are using the mirrorless cameras as a second camera to a full production rig. And those second cameras sometimes are they're great cameras, but they're one step more complicated than the ones that are intended for vlogging. And it might be good to research that aspect of it and kind of sort yourself into which camp you're in. Are you in the camp that is like, hey, I fit more into the characteristics of the type of shooter that needs to do what the vloggers do, or the type of shooter that needs to do what like Mark and Eric or Mark and Patrick are doing, in which case you'd look at one of the more standard mirrorless cameras. I shoot with the Sony mirrorless cameras also. The reason that Eric mentioned it is I started off with this hobby of using them as photography, but I was justifying it because I have a Sony FS7 shoulder mount camera, and I was justifying that they were my second camera to that. And more recently, I've just been using them as my sole camera to shoot with at regular shoots. So I have the Sony A1 and the Sony A7R5 and the A7S III. And they're all great at what they do. But I would say decide between, are you looking for something that's a little bit simpler, or something that's full featured that you can grow into and keep as a second camera later if you go bigger.
Right. Yeah, I would second that. I was going to say that, yeah, my use of the R5 is kind of like John's, where I bought it as a replacement for my still camera primarily. And then I've been shooting a lot of B-roll with it because it's very easy to put it on a gimbal. But I don't use it as a primary camera very much because it's, a lot more clunky when you're dealing with audio and trying to put neutral density filters and things on it. So I'm still shooting with a Canon C200, full-size cinema camera when I'm doing interviews and all the, the normal day-to-day stuff. But the R5 usually comes out on a shoot now as a B-roll camera. So yeah, you would need to figure out like exactly what you need to be doing. If you're going to be doing a lot of audio with your recording, then you may need to look at something a little bit different than a mirrorless camera.
Right.
Of course, you can use a Rode or something for that. And I'd be also curious your comments when you do gimbal a camera with.
Say that again, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious what recommendations or comments if you are going to be doing shaky cam and you want to gimbal it.
What?
So you like the A7s for if you're going to gimbal?
Mm-hmm. Some of
The
the smaller
A7's good,
factor.
or the R5 or the R6 are all good on gimbals. Yeah.
Any of the mirrorless form factor cameras because they're very small and very lightweight.
Yeah, though I have flown my 6 on a gimbal, and I actually I like flying my 6 on a gimbal simply because it has a lot of features that I can access that the the 3 doesn't have, or the A7S don't have easily. So, but yeah, if you're flying it all day, man, I tell you, yes, you get a smaller camera.
And you just use a prime on that then?
I use 16-35 on that usually for the most part.
You got to stay pretty wide with gimbals.
Generally speaking,
I've tried a 50 on it one time, and it was not a very fun experience.
But not fun. Yeah, Ava, what would you be doing with yours?
Yeah. So currently, where I'm at now, we film like some like stationary things in the lab environment, and then also some like interview style videos. We've been doing, and I can branch out from there. Like I'm thinking of doing also other things on my own outside of that. So, kind of wanted to get something for myself and start doing some other projects. So I'm not exactly sure which route I would go there, but I'm kind of like, I'm a scientist at Illumina, but then I went to tech support and started making videos there I've done that for a couple years. As my full regular job. And so I've kind of just learned everything on my own. So it's good to come here and hear like all of you guys talking about what you use, and just kind of learn about what the options are here. yeah, I'm kind of just starting out to like think of other things to do on my own.
The one thing I would advise you is, as best you can. It's hard in San Diego because we don't really have the same kind of rental houses as you do like up in LA or something like that. But if you can find a way to either go up to LA and go to a camera place, or rent some cameras from people here, and just find a camera that rent it for like a day, go shoot with it, find the thing that works the way you work, that feels that feels good in your hand, that does all the things that you need it to do before you plunk down money and spend a lot of cash on a camera that may or may not be what you need it to be. It might be too much, it could be too little. Just go out and play with some if you can, and and find people that have the cameras you're interested in if you can, and go meet with them and check out their cameras and see what it's like. That to me, I think, goes a long way in sort of finding that right camera for you.
Yeah, that's some good advice. Just take them for a test drive first.
Say what?
The user interface was so different between different brands.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can drive you nuts. I mean, I know people that hate the Sony menus. I owned a Canon camera for a while. That menu drove me nuts, but that's just because it was unfamiliar to me. I know the Sony menus like the back of my hand. They don't drive me nuts, but I know they do other people. So it's like, that's why you got to really have to sort of spend some time with each, find the one that feels good in your hands, and that's like, yeah, I like this. This is comfortable to me. This looks and works the way that I like to work. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's great discussion. I'll probably play this back. I'm glad you're recording it.
Yeah. I'll have it up on the YouTube channel probably tomorrow or Friday, just depending upon my schedule. So, all right.
Thank you, everyone, for your input.
No problem. So real quick did you land another job? Because I know you got let go from Illumina, right? And one of their massive layoffs.
Yeah, so I was part of the RIF, the layoff in last year, but they were like, what happened? Like, we need you back. So they brought me back as a contractor for now.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah, until, the point when I can possibly be hired back as a regular employee.
Gotcha.
So I'm kind of in that like in between area with that. But also,
double as a contractor.
Yeah, and then I can also do some of my own things, hopefully on the side. So
cool. Well, very good. Thank you guys. Okay, so thank you all. This is the last meeting of the year. I'm going to take a couple months off. We'll be back in January, and everybody have a good holiday season. Stay safe, stay healthy, all that stuff. I will be posting stuff up on the Facebook page, so look for stuff there as it comes out. And I might even post some little tutorials and stuff like that, so look for that stuff. But yeah, we'll see everybody in January.